Yeah, okay, we're back again after being interrupted by the dog at seconds number 49. We're going to have a little discussion of liberalism versus conservatism, but I'm going to deal with just one topic today as an example. I was listening to NPR in the radio, and they were discussing very critically what's happened with care of the mentally ill, that they're often ending up in jail now, which is the very worst place for a mentally ill person to be, not being treated properly, not getting proper care, not getting proper medication often, and that this is a horrible, terrible way to be treating the mentally ill. Uh, Many of the people discussing aren't old enough to remember the days that I remember. I think this happened actually. Pretty sure I was in medical school at the time, or maybe early in my residency. That puts it back in the early 70s. That there was tremendous uproar from the liberal community that people were being put in mental institutions who were not a danger to themselves or anybody else, and this was against their will, and this was a travesty of not honoring the human rights of the mentally ill. And the movement to stop hospitalizing mentally ill people was very successful. Many mental hospitals closed their doors, cut the number of beds way down, and the ability to hospitalize people who were not in immediate danger to themselves or others became the norm. Well, what happens over a period of time is that these people uh, are in the community. They cannot function. They scare other people who may call a mental health agency or professional, who are told that there's nothing they can do for them if they're not an immediate threat to themselves or somebody else. They can't involuntarily hospitalize them. That what they have to do is to talk them into looking for help. Unfortunately, the part of many people's mental illness is that they will not look for help or refuse help. So they're on the streets now, where they scare people who think they are going to harm themselves, and they call the police. And the same mentally ill people that the liberals were protesting were in mental hospitals are now in jails. Now they're protesting that they're in jails and want them to be back in hospitals. I can see an endless cycle going on here, which is a very good example of the difference in the way liberals and conservatives think. Liberals feel that there's basically no human problem that can't be resolved with kindness and consideration of the other person. So I can understand how they felt it was objectionable to be putting mentally ill people in hospitals who didn't want to be there. Conservatives, on the other hand, are very resistant to changing things, feeling that things are the way they are for some good reason, and one should be very careful about making any change at all. My personal philosophy is somewhere between the two. I think we can be considerate, but we have to be thoughtful, and so that puts me in the middle. Too many liberals think if it sounds good, it must be good. If you could put the words individual rights or any rights or justice, you can squeeze that word in somehow. Whatever you're doing has got to turn out well and for the good of everybody. Well, it turns out that that doesn't work. That's the main problem. I hate to quote William Buckley because he's a little bit more conservative than I prefer, but he had a very good quote. What he said was, liberals have good ideas. They have very good ideas. There's only one problem. Their ideas don't work. And this is a good example of that. The idea of not hospitalizing people against their will makes good sense from a civil rights point of view. But the result of that is something which could have been anticipated if people thought the problem through rather than just running ahead and doing what felt good at the moment. So, what I advocate basically is a nuanced approach to almost everything. Because something sounds good does not mean that it will be good. That's why it's better to proceed in small steps towards what is good, to see what works and what doesn't work, and make adjustments as you go, as opposed to going in full steam. And this could be applied to any number of problems that we have in society. We have many problems that need to be addressed. But I just caution everybody to consider the possibilities that the liberals may be suggesting too much too fast, and the conservatives may be opposing too much and moving things too slowly. Which is the reason why we need open discussion. It's the reason why we don't need a cancel defund and block speakers from speaking, as is going on now in many of our liberal institutions. We need to have an open forum with an exchange of ideas we like and ideas that we don't like, as opposed to shutting them all off. Otherwise, we end up doing what happened 30 or 40 years ago, as it were, of making what sounded like a good decision, but had very bad ramifications, and now we have to deal with those bad ramifications. So I'm not offering an answer to the mental health problem, just a caution in terms of all problems. Rushing into an answer that sounds good is usually not the right thing to do. That some caution is appropriate, some dialogue between liberals and conservatives is appropriate. A middle course which can be adjusted further is a more proper step. So in the example I gave, there could be better representation legally, medically for the mentally ill in terms of whether they really need to be in the hospital. People can have trials to see whether they can exist outside the hospital, but we shouldn't wait until they are a threat to themselves or others before we do something and end up putting them into a prison, which is worse for everybody. So we're keeping this under 10 minutes. We're at 9:04. I wish everybody a good night. And just try, if you can, to appreciate that there might be two sides to an argument. Maybe not equal, but at least both that need to be considered. All right. See you next time I get in the mood.